Hello, this is Cryptolyze. I hope you are well this Saturday, January 6th, 2024. It is with pleasure that we meet again today for our weekly. We will come back to macroeconomics. We will come back to BTC. We will necessarily come back to these ETFs, which have not yet been validated, in which we are awaiting validation, and especially to this crash at the level of altcoins in which we feel that liquidity is shifting. I'll explain everything to you. It starts right away. We're going to start with the macro, so it's already important to take a macro update after the first week at the start of the year. It actually sets the tone for us initially. I had already announced a certain number to you of points on the fact that we were certainly going to retrace to the level of the SPF 500, that's it. We validated the first weekly retracement candle, in which the next step for me is 4,600. We still remain in this baseline because that, in this case, we are at the beginning of the year 2024, and the tone is set. We made an ATH on the futures end of 2023. So for me, it was the sign of overexposure, and that at a given moment we were going to breathe something that we are now having something that we also see at the level of NASDAQ. NASDAQ is obviously what is currently driving the American economy. We do not forget that we are really around tech pure, and it is the American economic engine. And as long as that, it holds. It will hold. It is mainly carried by artificial intelligence. We will come back to this. I think I will certainly do a show for you next week, really focus on that. But artificial intelligence will really play a very important role in American industry and American economic power in the years to come. 2, 3, 4 years to come. But that's not the subject of the video. In any case, we trace next step, 15,800. And then we could look further down. Look precisely. The 14,500 are really the two big tariffs that I have on the NASDAQ, which will necessarily press on the SPF 500. Moreover, at an important level, we take this curve, which is the SP 500 divided by the monetary printing, which in fact gives us the American economic power subtracted from all this monetary printing that we may have had. It is a very important curve, which gave us in particular the subprime crisis, the COVID crisis, and the start of the inflationary crisis, in which we had a very big rejection on this resistance zone, in which we made a breakout at the end of the year, 2023. This breakout in itself, as I explained to you, either we managed to make a very nice rebound, to lean on it and start again, and at that moment we will have a tendency which will be more linked to the internet bubble, so we will really be in a trend of hyper-speculation around artificial intelligence, so it will really be a very strong narrative on the economy, international and the American economy, and therefore inevitably, at the level of cryptos, will have a very strong impact. That's why I will do a special broadcast on it very clearly. We are in the process of having the answer or little agreement. We are really very, very close. When we actually see this graph there compared to the other graphs on the SP 500, it corresponds to our zone's resistance. First zone, second zone, and third zone. It corresponds exactly to that with first zone, second zone. Here we can clearly see the support zones that we have, and the last support zone, which would be in this zone here, with at the same time the oblique that we have at the level of this compression. Because in fact, if we look closely, it is a very big compression that we have, a compression that has lasted since 2009, the monetary crisis. So we can clearly see that we have here the financial crisis in which we find ourselves in a form of compression which normally should burst upwards or downwards. But we must have a response in the coming years. And precisely here I think that even in the coming weeks, in the coming months, we will have an answer on whether yes or no, we have a very good rebound which is in the process of occurring, or whether we have a reintegration, and at that moment that will give the tone for years to come. So we will now focus on crypto, on this week in which we did not have validation of the BTC ETF. So we know that we have a deadline which arrives on January 10th. I won't go into the whole explanation, but to be quick, we have to understand that on January 10th we have an ETF which is coming to an end. Okay. But only ETF, understand that all the others are heading to Mars. The most important, that of iShare, therefore that of BlackRock, which generally holds the world economy on its shoulders, and therefore which has monumental pressure, is in March. On the other hand, in fact, the deadline is January 10th. By January 10th, we must have either the refusal of the one that must be validated, in fact the last deadline in January, or a validation, and it will be a validation of all the ETFs. So that's why we actually have this momentum that is being created, this set of news that is arriving, in which, on a daily basis, I give you all this information. But you have to understand that the information to remember today is what I am showing you, the fact that all altcoins are in the red. So there you have to understand that BTC itself has had a lot of volatility. There I am on the CME, which is closed, the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, which represents the future of institutional investors. Once again, it is precisely We are pushing you to believe that you absolutely need the spot ETF to be able to expose yourself to BTC, something which is false. There is a future that exists so we can build structural exposures when we are institutional to assets like BTC. But, above all, the advantage is that it is closed, so it actually gives us the vision of this week. And we see this wick, this candle which is made up almost entirely of wicks. That's why I say this wick, in which we have a high wick, a low wick, and overall that sums up what happened this week. No volatility during the week. During the days, we had a lot of volatility. But the opening of the week versus the closing of the week, we had zero volatility, which means that we have a market which has simply liquidated everything that could be liquidable in this range here, and we closed at the same zone, so we are in a phase of uncertainty and consolidation. This consolidation phase at the BTC level, we see it clearly here. We still have the oblique. We still have this big range which is very present here, which keeps us here even if we have the bullish acceleration in which we have made a liquidation of the shorts, then the liquidation of the longs with the bearish acceleration. But we are generally still in this range. Technical at the BTC level, so we are clearly waiting for the news at the ETF level. Whether it is validation, whether it is refusal, in all cases we will have an explosion, whether upwards or downwards, or whether it is upwards then downwards. Remember that the validation of an ETF does not mean that we directly have a monumental injection of liquidity at the BTC level, and that this injection of liquidity will be carried out on the market, and he can very well, and will even personally. I think done OTC over-the-counter implied directly in deals made with Coinbase in which we will buy at a regular price, because obviously when we buy 20 billion, for example, of BTC, if we do not want to buy the 20 billion at 10 above the market price, because that's the impact it will have on the market when we press the buy button, at which point we call our friend Coinbase and ask, okay, at this moment, do you have 20 billion BTC to be able to offer me? On what average price? We work like that. We make a transit. We make a monetary transit, a BTC transit, and we no longer talk about it, and we have no impact or very little impact in any case on the price of the market, and that's also how it works a lot when we have large amounts. The important element to remember is that here we are in a lateralization zone, and yet on the total market cap 3, therefore which represents all altcoins when we subtract BTC and Ethereum on the total cryptos. And we see that we are eating a big bowl while normally we are supposed to have an upward acceleration. Understand that when we are in a bull run phase, when we are in an acceleration phase, we are supposed to have a lateralization of the BTC following an expansion. This is exactly what we experienced here. Okay, we zoom out a little. We have our expansion phase, which is here, lateralization phase. We had a start to the alt season, which happened here, with a total of 3 which exploded upwards. We can clearly see here these strands which are there, so we can clearly see the big acceleration. On the other hand, we still have this lateralization which is in progress. Even here we see it there, and what is happening? We see that on the total 3 we return here. On the other hand, we no longer have a transfer of liquidity, but an exit liquidity. That means that there we have liquidity which is in the process of leaving the market because there it is not in train. To exit on BTC, we can clearly see that we have a lateralization on BTC. We do not have volume of BTC, so that means that we have a profit taking on altcoins. This also implies that here we have proof that we are in the process of reducing the risk on the arrival of new BTC. The fact that we didn't have the news this week, we have a sort of bellows that is falling. And so that means that obviously we will have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday to be able to validate it. So generally, they always warn a few days in advance. So generally it will be Monday, Tuesday. The probability that it will be Monday is still relatively low, so it would be more Tuesday in this case that we have news for a validation or a refusal. It doesn't matter much, but in any case, the indication we have is that the people who have been positioned are currently taking profit in the alt season. So that means that it's the end of the alt season as it stands, and it's also seen drastically in terms of dominance. The dominance, we can clearly see that we have made a very nice rebound, and we have a re-acceleration just this week. And even if we are going to look a little more in the days, you will see that we really have a few days which have taken away from the increase. We have Tuesday in which we really pushed, and then Thursday and Friday, in which we pushed hard. So we actually have this momentum that is building, and I think it will move even more during the weekend, because it implies that on the weekend we have no future at all. CME to actually be able to move the price of BTC. So we have a liquidity exit before the reopening of the CME. I remind you that the upward movement that we had here, very impulsive liquidation was made at the opening of the CME, linked mainly to open interest, which was injected strongly at the level of these CME futures. So for me, we have a signal that tells us be careful. Keep your risk, put us at B, take profits if you haven't already done so, and prepare us if we actually have a sell the news. And even sell the news, or even why not worse, a refusal of the RK ETF to then validate all the other ETFs in March. So here we actually have this uncertainty which plays on the market. Once again, we have opportunities which are being proposed. We just have to be prepared to seize the current opportunities, to accept the fact that potentially we could break bearish to have new opportunities, and thirdly that, why not? In fact, everything is validated, and we have 20 billion that went directly into marketing, and so at this point we are accelerating upward very strongly. Will it be altcoins that will grow? I do not think so. It will first be BTC that sets the direction with a breakout. I remind you, we are just going to zoom out a little bit. That for me, the target, we are going to zoom out here. It will be much simpler. The target for me will therefore be above 48,000 to get the top here. If we ever have a big acceleration, look for the top of Terra Luna. If we have validation and a sells the news effect which will arrive after this break here. However, the important thing is to be prepared for each eventuality. We don't try to guess the future. We try to prepare for each eventuality in order to have a plan, a strategy, and not to be caught off guard and react emotionally. Remember, emotion is your worst enemy. And if we look a little at the outperformance of BTC, here at the level of altcoins, we see that we still have a compression that is taking place. There, it's really the representation of all altcoins versus BTC, and we see that we have some outperformance, but we can clearly see that we have a very marked inclination. Already for several days, we have had very strong downward pressure. So that's why I'm telling you that there we have a signal of profit-taking. We have a phase of expansion, lateralization, profit-taking. This is a signal for me where in fact the market is preparing for an eventuality that, yes, we are a sell the news, and therefore behind us, we return to levels which are less exposed to have a landing phase. Prepare the halving, and prepare for the end of the 2024 year with the real bull run, which is rather classic in fact in phases that we have already experienced. Once again, the problem is that we have experienced few phases to really draw statistics. But in any case, we always base ourselves on what we have experienced to be able to see the different eventualities. Just a small point in terms of order flow, still very important. We see that the funding rate has calmed down following the expansion and liquidations. We see that the open interest is relatively flat. So we have a lack of interest from the market, which is rather classic when we are actually waiting for news as strong as the validation or refusal of ETFs. And once again, I say ETFs, but if ever there is a refusal, it will only be one refusal. If there is a validation, it will be a plurality of validations because we will not validate just one. We will in fact validate all those who have deposited and who meet the deposit standards. Besides, if you don't feel ready, don't forget that I have provided an investment and trading guide, 30 concise pages for how to buy, how to manage your emotions, when to sell, in what way. It's in the description, it's in the comments, it's free. And we'll meet again tomorrow for a new video which will be much more focused on psychology. And if you ever like my content and you like this video, don't hesitate to like, share, and comment. It always makes me very happy, and I'll see you tomorrow. If you want to train and really enjoy bull running, it's simple. There is perfect, complete, free training available. It's through an educational journey that teaches you everything about blockchain, crypto, investment, technical analysis, and trading. All this for free in comments and descriptions. You have exercises, multiple choice questions, modules, videos, guides, everything to support you in your progress.